Malik Jennings stood at the front desk of Langston and Beckman, introducing himself with quiet dignity, only to be dismissed like a delivery man and told to use the back entrance. Minutes later, the $42 million deal he was about to sign vanished with a single phone call. By the time they realized who they turned away, it was already too late. Their future was walking calmly out the door. The drizzle wasn't heavy, just enough to miss the sidewalks and blur the wide glass doors outside Langston and Beckman Consulting in downtown Chicago. Inside the lobby, the marble floors gleamed under buzzing fluorescent lights, the scent of fresh brewed coffee floating faintly in the air. People in pressed suits and polished leather shoes clicked past with earbuds tucked in, phones glued to their palms, every one of them looking like they were rushing somewhere important. Malik Jennings stepped through the doors quietly, unnoticed at first. He wore a simple gray trench coat, not designer, just functional against the damp air, and carried a brown leather satchel that had clearly seen its share of years. No Rolex gleamed on his wrist. No assistant hovered at his side. Just a tall, broad-shouldered black man, 47 years old, with steady eyes and a calm presence that didn't demand attention, but maybe should have. Behind the reception desk, a young woman glanced up from her phone. Her name tag said Chloe. She couldn't have been older than 24, brunette hair tucked behind her ears, glossy lips pursed in mild boredom, one AirPod in. She barely gave Malik a glance before flicking her gaze up to the clock behind him. "Hi," Malik said, his voice smooth, polite, not rushed. "I have a 10 a.m. meeting with the executive board." She blinked at him, chewing on a piece of gum, not moving to check the schedule. "For which department?" "I'm here to meet with the board of directors." "It's scheduled." "My name's Malik Jennings." He waited, giving her a beat to catch up. Instead, Chloe leaned back in her chair and smirked slightly, like she was indulging him. "Right. And you're with, what again? Deliveries? Vendors don't usually check in up front." "No," Malik replied, still calm, still polite. "I'm the CEO of Vertex Logics." She didn't even bother to hide the disbelief. She glanced down at her computer screen with a dramatic sigh, fingers tapping the keys lazily. "I don't see your name. Maybe you're at the wrong building? This is 1852 North Wabash Avenue, correct?" Malik asked. She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, but like I said, vendors gotta use the loading dock entrance out back. You can't wait up here." Malik paused, not because he was unsure, but because he'd seen this movie before. He could have pulled out his phone, shown the email confirmation, rattled off the names of the partners he'd spent 6 months negotiating with. He could have called security, demanded attention, forced a scene. But he didn't. He simply gave Chloe a small nod, turned quietly, and walked toward the revolving doors without another word. At that exact moment, the elevator pinged open across the lobby, and a young junior analyst, maybe fresh out of Northwestern, hustled out, a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. He froze mid-step when he saw Malik headed for the exit, recognition dawning on his face. "Mr. Jennings," he blurted, voice catching. "Sir, you're early, hold on, they're still." Malik raised a hand gently, not slowing his stride. "No worries," he said with a small, easy smile. "Just let them know I appreciate the opportunity." And with that, he pushed through the doors and out into the misty Chicago morning, his coat catching slightly in the breeze as he disappeared into the busy sidewalk traffic. The young analyst stood frozen, mouth half open, before the elevator doors swallowed him up again. Back at the front desk, Chloe went right back to scrolling through her Instagram feed, sipping her iced coffee through a pink straw, having no idea that her casual smirk had just triggered what would become one of the most expensive mistakes in the company's history. What she didn't know, what hardly anyone in that marble palace knew, was who they had just turned away. Malik Jennings wasn't born into power. He didn't inherit a network of venture capital friends or country club connections. He was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in a leaning, weather-beaten house that tilted a little more after every storm. His mother worked the night shift as a nurse at St. Mary's Medical, while his father, when he was around, patched up old cars in their cracked driveway, turning busted mufflers and borrowed parts into rent money. Malik learned early that the world didn't hand you things, you had to build them with your own two hands. When other kids were chasing girls in cutting class, Malik was salvaging broken computer parts from junkyards, piecing them together on a splintered card table in his bedroom. He wasn't playing games, he was teaching himself how machines talk to each other, how to make dead systems hum again. By the time he was 16, he had cobbled together a working desktop out of pure scrap and raw determination, writing code late into the humid Baton Rouge nights on a cracked monitor balanced on a milk crate. He didn't chase popularity. He chased understanding. He earned a partial scholarship to Xavier University of Louisiana, finishing in the top 5% of his class. No frat parties. No football games. Just a stubborn belief that he could build something that mattered. His first startup, a janky mobile scheduling app coded on a battered second-hand laptop, failed spectacularly. Malik didn't sulk. He iterated. He learned. He built better. His second project landed a quiet acquisition deal that barely made the local news, but it gave him seed money for Vertex Logics, the logistics optimization platform he nurtured like a second heartbeat. No flashy launch parties. No Silicon Valley buzz. Just contracts, clean execution, and systems that work better than anyone else's. By 47, Vertex Logics was a rising giant, streamlining freight operations across the Midwest for some of the biggest names in distribution. Malik didn't need New York or San Francisco zip codes to validate him. His work spoke for itself, if you were willing to listen. But Chloe hadn't listened. Langston and Beckman hadn't listened. They were too busy measuring him against their checklist of what power was supposed to look like: an expensive watch, a designer suit, a name they already recognized. What they didn't realize was that the man they dismissed had spent the past 7 months carefully negotiating a $42 million partnership deal with their executive board, a deal that was supposed to be signed, sealed, and celebrated today. A formality. A handshake. A photograph for the firm's newsletter. Instead, they turned him away at the door. And Malik Jennings, without raising his voice, without demanding respect, without so much as a flash of anger, made a single, quiet decision standing under the awning outside. He scrolled through his contacts to a name labeled Everett Systems C. Powers. Tapped. 2 rings. Malik, a deep voice answered, half curious, half surprised. "Man, you don't usually call me out of the blue. What's going on?" Malik stepped under the overhang of a sandwich shop across the street, watching the Langston and Beckman Tower gleaming in the mist like it was still proud of itself. "I've got something for you, Curtis," Malik said, his tone smooth, even. "If you're at your desk, I'll make it quick." "Yeah, of course." "Shoot. Remember that platform integration deal Langston's been dragging their feet on?" Malik asked. Curtis chuckled knowingly. "Yeah. You were supposed to be closing with them today, right?" "I was." Malik smiled slightly. "Until their front desk decided I wasn't worth the elevator ride." Dead silence on the line. Then Curtis let out a low, disbelieving whistle. "You're kidding me." "Nope. Sent me out the front door without even checking the calendar." Curtis swore softly. "You serious about what I think you're saying?" "I am," Malik said. "If Everett can match the terms we discussed last quarter, I'll reroute the partnership immediately." Curtis didn't hesitate. "We can match them, and then some. Our legal team's already got the drafts ready. We were just waiting on your word." "Then you have it," Malik said simply. "I'll have my general counsel reach out by close of business." Curtis practically laughed with relief. "Malik, I don't know what to say, man. This is huge." "Say thank you," Malik said, voice warm but firm. "And don't make me regret it." "You won't. I swear to you." Malik ended the call, slipping the phone back into his coat pocket. He didn't stand there staring up at the Langston building. Didn't need to. He knew exactly what kind of storm was about to roll through those marble hallways. He turned his collar up against the drizzle and stepped into the tide of pedestrians, blending into the crowd like any other face on the street. Behind him, Langston and Beckman's proud lobby glistened under artificial lights, completely unaware that in the span of 20 minutes, the ground under their feet had already started to crack. And Malik Jennings? He was already moving forward, quietly, steadily, like he always had, with the future tucked firmly under his arm. The drizzle clung to Malik's coat as he disappeared into the stream of pedestrians, while back inside Langston and Beckman's marble lobby, the fluorescent lights still buzzed overhead and Chloe still tapped lazily at her phone, blissfully unaware that the single polite man she had just dismissed had changed the course of their future with one calm phone call. 3 blocks down the street, on the 24th floor of Langston and Beckman's executive boardroom, a sleek conference table sat polished and waiting, leather chairs circled around it, a pitcher of cucumber water untouched in the center, and 9 senior executives fidgeted, checking their watches and murmuring to one another. It was already past 10:15, Malik Jennings was late, and Malik Jennings was never late. They had spent 7 months courting him, vetting him, running background checks, reviewing financials. The Vertex Logics platform had been a missing piece for Langston's logistics division for over a year, and this morning was supposed to be a formality, a handshake, a signature, a sealed future. Instead, confusion whispered through the room like a draft. "Have you heard from him?" one partner asked the lead negotiator, who frowned, pulling out his phone. "No call, no text, but he confirmed yesterday. He was excited, said he'd be here." The frowns deepened. A few pulled up email chains to double-check. One of the junior analysts, fresh-faced and still eager to impress, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He started. "There was someone downstairs. I think it might have been him." The room went still. "What do you mean?" the managing partner demanded. "I was coming up the elevator around 10, and I saw a guy leaving, big guy, gray coat, leather satchel. He looked like the profile photo we have on file, and you let him leave?" The negotiator snapped. The analyst flushed. "I didn't know. I thought maybe reception had already checked him in." Reception, one of the senior executives muttered darkly, already reaching for the phone. 2 minutes later, an intern rushed breathlessly back into the boardroom, face pale. "Reception says someone did come in, but Chloe turned him away. Thought he was a vendor." Silence slammed into the room like a physical blow. No one moved. No one spoke. The negotiator set his phone slowly on the table and said what everyone was already thinking. "He's gone. Maybe we can fix it," one executive said desperately. "Maybe call him." "Explain. You don't walk away from a deal like this," Simone Barkley, director of strategic growth, said sharply, "unless you already know exactly where you're going next." She didn't raise her voice, didn't have to. The truth hung in the air, bitter and heavy. Downstairs, Chloe was still oblivious, scrolling through her group chat about weekend brunch plans, tapping a laughing emoji under a photo of mimosas, while upstairs the foundation of the company she worked for was already starting to crack. By noon, every senior partner had sent at least one panicked email to Malik's executive assistant, to the general counsel, to the operations manager. No response, no out-of-office auto-reply. Just silence, deafening and absolute. By the end of the day, the whispers had started among the junior staff. By the next morning, the silence had turned into dread. And then, at 2:27 on Wednesday afternoon, the email dropped. It hit inboxes like a detonation. Vertex Logics and Everett Systems jointly announced a multi-year strategic partnership. A photo accompanied the announcement. Malik Jennings, standing tall next to Curtis Powers, the CEO of Everett Systems, both men smiling. Both men shaking hands firmly. The release praised the integration of Vertex Logics' cutting-edge logistics platform into Everett's nationwide distribution channels, promising a new era of efficiency and innovation. No mention of Langston and Beckman, not even a footnote. The story moved faster than anyone could have prepared for. By the next morning, half a dozen clients who had been counting on the Vertex Logics deal called Langston's account managers with terse, clipped conversations. Some asked questions, probing, suspicious. Others didn't bother asking at all. They just started pulling contracts, canceling renewals, moving business elsewhere. One of the biggest clients, a Midwest agricultural distributor worth nearly $7 million annually, sent a short, devastating email. Given Recent developments, we believe it is in our best interest to explore alternate partnerships. Within a week, Langston's projected earnings for the quarter dropped by over $20 million. The stock, usually steady if unremarkable, plunged by 11%. Investors started asking questions Langston didn't have good answers for. Internally, chaos erupted, emergency meetings were called. Partnerships scrambled for damage control. HR held long, uncomfortable sessions about public-facing professionalism. Chloe was called into a conference room and suspended pending review, but it didn't matter, not really, because the problem wasn't just Chloe, the problem was bigger, deeper. A rot hiding under polished marble and espresso-scented air. Langston and Beckman had built its empire on pedigree, polish, the right image, and somewhere along the way, they forgot that real value doesn't always wear a tailored suit or carry a monogrammed briefcase. They forgot that power doesn't always look the way you expect it to, and now, the internet had found its new folk hero. Malik's story spread through Twitter, LinkedIn, business blogs. Think pieces exploded overnight. Headlines like CEO snubbed at lobby, redirects $42 million deal to competitor, and why arrogance is the death of corporate success trended for days. People who didn't know Malik personally, people who had never heard of Vertex Logics before, shared their own stories, their own moments of being dismissed, underestimated, judged. At first glance, the company issued a vague public statement about reaffirming its commitment to inclusivity and professional respect, but nobody cared. The damage had a face now, a name, a story. Langston and Beckman wasn't just a firm with a PR problem, it was a cautionary tale, a slow-moving train wreck playing out in real time across the business world. Inside the firm, morale cratered. Conversation stopped when certain people entered a room, hallway smiles turned brittle, executives avoided eye contact with staffers. More clients trickled away, not loudly, but steadily, like sand slipping through cupped hands. By the end of the second week, 3 more major contracts had been lost. Some executives started quietly polishing their LinkedIn profiles, preparing exit strategies they didn't dare say out loud yet, but they knew the iceberg had hit, the damage was already done, and Malik Jennings, the man they didn't even bother to buzz upstairs, had walked away without raising his voice. Without a single public accusation, without demanding a thing, he didn't have to. All he had to do was take his value where it was respected, and Langston and Beckman, for all its prestige and marble and flashing lights, was left standing hollow and exposed, the echoes of their mistake ringing louder with every passing day. By the third week, Langston and Beckman didn't just feel shaken, it felt hollow, like a grand old ship taking on water while the crew kept pretending it was just a little rain. Executive meetings became tense, hollow rituals, filled with half-hearted spin and silent accusations, and beneath it all, everyone knew the truth. They had lost something they couldn't replace. They hadn't just lost a deal, they had lost trust, reputation, power, and the world outside their gleaming windows knew it too. But Malik Jennings wasn't watching their downfall. He wasn't giving interviews, wasn't tweeting cryptic quotes, wasn't basking in the public sympathy storm swirling around his name. He was building, as he always had. While Langston crumbled inward, Malik focused outward, solidifying the partnership with Everett Systems, overseeing integration, expanding Vertex Logics' capabilities, moving faster than ever, leaving the past exactly where it belonged, and when March rolled around, bringing with it the first tentative signs of a Chicago spring, Malik found himself standing once again in front of those familiar glass doors, same gray trench coat, same worn satchel hanging from one shoulder. But the man who stood there now wasn't the same one who had been turned away months ago. This time he wasn't here for a meeting, not for a deal, not even for a conversation. He was here for something simpler, something deeper. The receptionist desk had changed. Chloe was long gone, replaced by a young man with a neat haircut and a genuine smile who looked up immediately when Malik approached and said, "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" The respect was effortless, no hesitation, no assumptions. Malik simply nodded once, not giving his name, not needing to. The security guard stationed nearby straightened slightly, speaking quietly into his radio, and within minutes the elevator dinged open, and Natalie Carter stepped out. Natalie, early 50s, salt and pepper hair pulled back neatly, sharp gray blazer, a woman who had spent her career fighting battles behind boardroom doors most people never even knew were happening. She didn't smile, not yet, but her posture was open, her eyes steady. "Malik, she said, her voice even. "Thank you for coming." He nodded again, following her into a smaller conference room on the third floor, nothing like the grand space they had prepared months ago, no sweeping skyline view, just a modest table, 2 chairs, a carafe of coffee that neither of them touched. Natalie sat down carefully, folding her hands, looking him straight in the eye. "I'll be straight with you," she said. "We've taken a beating." Malik said nothing, letting the words hang in the space between them. "We lost 5 major contracts," she continued. 2 more are pulling back. Stock's down nearly 20%. Internal trust is fragile, and the board knows exactly why. Her mouth tightened slightly, not defensiveness, not anger, but something closer to regret. Malik leaned back slightly in his chair, watching her, waiting. "The people responsible for what happened that day," Natalie said, "they're no longer with us." Malik's face didn't flicker. "That's good," he said quietly. "But that's not why I'm here." Natalie's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Then why?" Malik's voice stayed calm, smooth, measured. "Someone asked me recently if I ever planned to make a public statement about what happened here," he said. "I told them no, because I wasn't interested in revenge. And I still am not." He paused, letting that truth settle. "I came back because I needed to see it one more time, to remind myself that I made the right call." For a long moment Natalie said nothing. Then, softly, she said, "You did." Malik stood, the conversation taking less than 7 minutes in total. No raised voices, no drama, no last-minute offers, no desperate deals, just a simple closing of a door that had already swung shut months ago. As they walked back toward the elevators, a group of interns passed them in the hallway, young, eager, papers and tablets clutched in their arms. One of them, a young black woman wearing a smart tan blazer and simple black sneakers, slowed slightly when she caught sight of Malik, her eyes widening just a fraction, just enough to say she recognized him, recognized what he meant. Without speaking a word, Malik caught her nod, a subtle, respectful acknowledgement, and returned it with a quiet nod of his own. No smile, no need. The understanding was clear, powerful, and real. Back in the lobby, Malik paused briefly by the reception desk, the new receptionist still busy checking badges, organizing visitor logs. Malik didn't say anything, didn't draw attention to himself, but he noticed the difference, the way the space no longer hummed with unearned superiority. It buzzed now with a careful humility, a lesson learned the hard way. Malik stepped out into the cool air, the city humming around him, the skyline stretching wide and proud against the clear blue morning, and for the first time since that rainy day months ago, a small, quiet smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, not smug, not victorious, just certain. He had made the right decision, and no one could take that from him. Inside, Natalie Carter stood near the entrance, watching him disappear into the crowd, feeling, perhaps for the first time in a long time, the full weight of what had been lost. They hadn't just missed out on a deal, they hadn't just lost a client, they had lost an opportunity to build something lasting, something rare, something real, all because they hadn't been willing, or able, to see the value standing right in front of them. Langston and Beckman would survive, maybe, but they would never quite be the same, because now they knew, the lesson carved deep into every meeting, every handshake, every cautious smile. True power doesn't shout, it doesn't strut, it doesn't wear a neon badge announcing itself to the world. True power moves quietly, carries itself with dignity, and only reveals itself to those wise enough, humble enough, to recognize it when it walks through the door. And if you can't see it, if you can't see the worth in someone who doesn't look the way you expect, then you don't deserve the future they could have brought you. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real cost they would keep paying for a long, long time to come. In a world moving faster than ever, it's easy to rely on quick judgments, on appearances, on assumptions, on the belief that we can size someone up in a glance. But Malik Jennings' story reminds us that true greatness doesn't wear a uniform we expect. It doesn't always come packaged in designer labels or speak in polished, familiar tones. Sometimes, the person who holds the key to transformation, the person who can change the future, is the one we overlook because we're too busy looking for the wrong signs. The executives at Langston and Beckman lost much more than a business deal. They lost an opportunity to grow, to build, to stand for something better, because they couldn't slow down long enough to truly see the man standing before them. They forgot that character, resilience, and quiet strength often speak the loudest, not through titles, but through actions. And once you miss that moment, You don't always get a second chance. For all of us, the lesson is simple but profound. Treat every person with dignity. Listen before you judge. Open your eyes to the possibility that greatness often moves quietly among us, wearing a simple coat, carrying a worn briefcase, offering something extraordinary if we're wise enough to recognize it. Arrogance may look powerful in the short term, but in the long run, humility is what sustains real success. At U.S. Instructive Stories, we believe that behind every interaction, big or small, there is a chance to show kindness, to build bridges, to recognize value beyond appearances. Malik didn't seek revenge. He didn't need to. His strength came from knowing his worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it. That's a lesson worth carrying into every room we enter, every handshake we offer, and every conversation we have. Thank you, dear listeners, for spending your time with us today. If this story moved you, made you reflect, or reminded you of a moment in your own life when dignity spoke louder than words, we encourage you to share it. And if you haven't already, we warmly invite you to subscribe to U.S. Instructive Stories. Here, every story we tell is a mirror, a reminder that every act of respect, every moment of decency, shapes the world we all live in. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. We look forward to bringing you more stories that inspire, challenge, and, above all, remind us of the power of quiet, unwavering character.